Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Since your high school football season's over, I'm going to start the show with a quote. Probably the only time that this ever happens, as I almost read the wrong thing. There was a winner, there was a non-winner, but the real winner was football, the game of football. What do you think of that quote, Matt?
I think it's a stupid quote.
Why?
A non-winner.
Well, he didn't want to say loser because that would upset Penn State fans, right?
I'm sure that it would.
Because if he would have said, hey, we were victorious, we were great, we're winners, and the other team, they're a bunch of losers out there, you know, but at least people got to see a good football game, so overall football's the winner. Like, that would be taking the other direction. And of
He could have
course,
just simply said the good guys won.
hey, he could have. Because of course I'm talking about Jim Harbaugh's comments after the Penn State game, which we're going to get into later in the show. But I wanted to start off because that quote, this second week in a row that Harbaugh's gone viral. And I don't know if you watch like any of the Ravens games, but it seems like every time I tune in, the announcers are talking about Jim Harbaugh. Like, it's unbelievable. They were saying like, oh yeah, last time the Ravens had a big win, like Jim called his brother John, and then they were like telling some story about Jim Harbaugh. And I'm like, why? Like, are they begging for him to come back to the NFL? They just miss him? It's not like they're plugging the game, because I could see like, hey, we're going to tell a story about Jim Harbaugh, and then we're going to say, and speaking of Jim Harbaugh, the Michigan Wolverines are taking on Penn State on Saturday on Fox. Like, they didn't even do that. They just told the story and that was it. And it was kind of random. So I'm like, why? It's like the media loves the guy. And then like last week, he made that comment about the coaching or the officiating in the Big Ten, saying that they made the wrong calls in the Michigan State game. And of course he got torched for that after we did the show. Everyone was like, oh, there he is, the whiner, the crybaby. But the last time I remember him even complaining about the refs was after the Ohio State game with the spot that was controversial. And then the past couple years, he hasn't said anything. And everyone's been reporting like, oh, he lost his passion. He doesn't care. Like, remember when he used to chew out the refs and like complain about stuff? Like, he must not be into the game anymore. That's why he's going to end up getting fired. So it's like, the guy can't win.
Yeah.
But I thought the quote was funny. I did see.
And I think if you go too hard against the officials, then you end up getting fined from the NCAA.
Yeah, and they hate you. Like, it was pretty clear whenever he first came back to Michigan that officials literally hated him. Like, they were throwing flags. If you watch the Penn State game even, immediately there was a big Michigan play and a flag on the sideline warning. Like, how many other teams get sideline warnings? It's not like Beaver Stadium has gigantic mounds of room for the team. It's like, yo, your team's excited, like, cut that out. But did you see that he was caught on fire during that game?
What?
You didn't see that? So apparently he was like talking to one of the players or something. He was too close to the space heater and his pants just caught on fire. And so he was coaching with a gigantic hole in his leg. It's hard to do justice on the show because I know most of our downloads are for just a podcast, so they don't watch the video. So even if I started to put video stuff up, it's hard for them to see. But maybe I'll try to find it and put it on our Twitter. But yeah, I thought that was ridiculous because I've never heard of that happening. That you're too close to the space heater, your pants catch on fire. And they were like, luckily he had multiple layers on, so like it only caught like the outside. He must have had long johns on underneath or something, so you couldn't even see his skin. But like, could you imagine if you had like second degree burns? And of course, you're not going to leave the game.
It was like burned his pants like mid thigh. Just go to the pair of khaki shorts on.
It'd been funny if he just ripped the leg off. People would be like, "What the hell?" It's like
just coaching in his underwear.
Well, it's different than like, remember when Joe Pa changed his underwear and they had like Shitgate where he like, did he shit his pants? Like, remember, I think it was against Ohio State. He like ran across the field and came back with different pants on. So it's like a different version of that. But we'll get back into that game and other college news later. My main topic this week, Steelers. it's very apparent that they're going to have issues when Ben's gone. I saw a lot of people, tying the lines is bad enough. And then they try to write it off like they made an article about Najee Harris about not knowing that you could tie in the NFL. How the hell are these players supposed to know how many times the NFL changes the overtime rules? Like they shortened it, then you could go for a field goal. And then if you got a field goal now, then the other team gets a chance. Like, it's hard to keep it straight. I think they shortened the time, right? Isn't it only 10 minutes now?
I think.
Which is even more ridiculous. So I think it's going to lead to more ties. Because one drive could eat that whole thing up, and then you miss a field goal, and that's the game. Like, it almost makes the second possession worthless. But overall, not a good feeling. They were attacking one of the Pittsburgh reporters because she was complaining that Haskins wasn't like involved in the team, like during warm-ups and stuff, and they said he was just like kind of aloof on his phone and like just like basically screwing around, like not really trying to do passes correctly and stuff, just like throwing a ball up. And then a lot of former players were like, how do you know he's not like changing music on his phone? Like, how do you know that? And I was thinking like, if he's not like engaged, you can easily tell that. Like if you were around the team and you're seeing a player that's like usually pumped up for warm-ups or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's such a drastic change where they're like checked out that you want to report on it. Like, I think that's a pretty big deal. And it's not like he hasn't had any issues before, so much that the Redskins were just like, yo, you're out of here. And then no other teams were really interested in him. But I am disappointed that they missed on Cam Newton. Because I've been talking about Aaron Rodgers, and dude, I even spelled his name wrong last week. I mentioned it to you because I had Aaron Rodgers, I typed in. I've been talking about him for weeks now. So I type it in, and it's like, did you mean Rodgers without the D? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Did I mean that? So I just auto-corrected it and copied and pasted it in. And then I'm like, that doesn't look right. But I'm like, I guess let me just do one more search on Google. So I search on Google, and normally it tells you, yo, did you mean this? And then correct it. And it didn't. So I thought, man, I've been spelling his name wrong all the time because I thought it had a D in it. And so I go back, post the show. And then today I'm looking at last week's episode, and I'm like, that still doesn't look right. Let me look that up. And of course it's wrong. So I don't know what the hell was going on last week. Must have thought I was talking about Mr. Rogers. I don't know how he spells his name though either. But I think Aaron Rodgers would be a great get. You've seen how the Packers look totally different with him at quarterback. Cam Newton and the Panthers, it was like a match made in heaven. I know he didn't play the whole game. PJ Walker is now, I think, 7-0 as a starter in the NFL. So it's baffling that the Panthers were kind of like, yeah, Cam's our quarterback now. But I just think in terms of seeing Christian McCaffrey completely fall apart without Cam Newton, I think Cam Newton's running ability, he ran for a touchdown in the game. Like, they put him in the goal line. The Panthers have been having issues down there all year. Immediate touchdown. It was like he had so much pressure off McCaffrey, just him being in the game and them having to keep an eye on him, that it opened everything up. And that they crushed the Cardinals. I know the Cardinals had, Colt McCoy? Talk about a guy that seemingly looked like he might have been an NFL talent, got hurt in that national championship game. And, I mean, now you're a career backup, which nothing against that. That's probably an easy job. Because I don't even think you hate you at practice, right? You get beat up 2 games a year in preseason. Or I guess 3. Was it 3 now? That's it. That's easier than the WWE, Matt. Which I hate whenever they switch the games up because I'm used to having the 1 o'clock on my dual TVs. You have 2 games on. And I'm like, all right, let me put the channels on, go get some lunch, and then I come back out and WWE's on. And I'm like, wait a second. Where's the other game? And of course, they made the second game in the afternoon, so I got the Cardinals and the Panthers. And then they got that crappy Seahawks Packers game where Seahawks couldn't do anything, and I think they have real issues. And I'm like, wow, what a crap day of football. That tie with the Steelers and Lions to start this off. And then Packers and Seahawks. Who would even want to watch that? But
it's a rough one.
It's bad. What do you think? I went pretty long there. What are your thoughts on the weekend? What games stood out for you?
That Steelers game was really, really hard to watch. And just from the standpoint that the Lions got, I almost had some PTSD watching the Lions get into that oversized set and just run it right down Pittsburgh's throat. Because it almost reminded me of the way our playoff game went.
With the Jaguars?
No.
Oh, your high school one.
My high school team.
I think about the one a couple years ago where they also got ran all over. Blake Bortles.
Oh no. Recent PTSD. But, one of the things that I noticed was Devin Bush was getting, I don't know if they, for a while, they were signing all these linebackers that were really heavy. And it was so what are we doing? We have these heavier linebackers, and we're going with smaller. Devin Bush is just getting road graded by these tight ends and tackles and, getting hung up in the mix. It was why?
Well, see, that's why, and he hasn't looked the same since his injury. And so, I'm really worried about him because I was a big fan of his at Michigan. And then even come with the Steelers, he was hot when he first came into the league. And you're right. You can't have all small linebackers. You almost need even an outside, flex guy that can just blitz like they used to have all the time in the 90s with their 3-4. And so now it's all right, you got the fast guys that's good, but you're right. Whenever they go heavy, their defense, I don't think is built for that. So I don't know. Plus, TJ Watt's now hurt. I don't know if he's out.
But they have Watt, but I feel like Watt is even average size compared to what Vince Williams was 250. They had Harrison that was a monster.
Yeah, Harrison was what I'm thinking of, where they had him as a linebacker / defensive end type.
Yes, and I think that's where that's what they're lacking now, because I think for the rest of the year that's what you're going to see. Is you're going to see these teams that are going to just get in these heavier sets and run at Pittsburgh, because that's clearly a glaring weakness now.
Yeah, and Ben might be out again because he's still in protocol, which to me, isn't it only going to get worse? How many other players are going to miss because of this as we get into the winter months and into the playoffs and stuff? Because you would think that if you're vaccinated, I thought it was going to be 1 game max. But now you're looking at that and you're all right, they could have been in first place with the win. Now they're back and it's not looking good. After a tie to the Lions, nah, no way. There's no way they're going to win.
As soon as I saw Baltimore lost, was don't bet on Pittsburgh.
But for a tie, that's even worse. I thought, all right, they went to overtime. And I did think this is going to be a tie. That's how these stupid games go. But then I'm no, there's no way. No way that they tie this. They have to beat them and they're going to be tied for first. But nope. Now you're sitting there. Do you have a surprise New England team that's a half game behind the Bills? Or whatever, because of bye week, I guess. And then you have the Colts that are sitting there at 500, along with the entire AFC West that is right there, tied with the AFC North. So where it looked like the North might be able to squeak in a lot of teams to the playoffs, they're at the point now where if they start falling apart, Browns, Steelers, Bengals choking, they're going to be out. You're going to have whatever sorry team is left in this division as they limp all down the stretch. Because like the Chiefs looked back, the Chargers have been looking all right. I know they all lost too, which luckily for Pittsburgh and stuff, a tie to the Lions though. Like you got to have that game, I think. But Ben's out, and like this is what you're going to be looking forward to next year if you don't sign an Aaron Rodgers type or whatever. Speaking of, I don't even know if we mentioned this because I've been really curious because I brought up Cam Newton. And the Panthers were interested in Deshaun Watson. So did you see that they were willing to trade all those pieces, the Dolphins were?
No.
So they were willing to trade a bunch of first-round picks and all of this stuff. And all Deshaun Watson had to do was settle with his accusers. Like they said, we're not pulling the trigger until you can make, like we can go to the league and say like, look, he settled so that he didn't get put on the exempt list. Because the league said that like, if you try to trade for him, he's going to be on the exempt list as long as this case is open. And like, he's like, no, I'm going to fight it. So he's not coming back this year. I don't know how long. Legal cases take forever. So for that to come out, like, you're the Texans, you're going to be sitting on him. They're going to have to just release him, I would think. I mean, unless he didn't want to go to the Dolphins. But like, I would think that if that's how they approached it, every team was approaching it like that. So it didn't matter where he wanted to go.
Yeah.
He would have had to do, and I mean, it makes business sense. You're going to pay a guy millions of dollars and give a bunch. That would tank your team. That would completely tank it. Did you see, was it Boris, the big agent in Major League Baseball, was bitching about the Braves?
No.
He said that something needs to be done because they tanked to win that World Series, and it's not fair to players that are working hard and deserve to be paid more. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Major League Baseball is all about overpaying players. He's just mad that they have a bunch of players locked up for long term or whatever from tanking, getting them signed young. And that now he thinks that other teams are not going to sign like these big free agent signings. And they're just going to say, you know what? Let's just tank. Which, how are you going to compete with those big teams without a salary cap? You can't. Like if the Dolphins had traded all those number one picks with the salary cap, done. That would have set them back 5-10 years, Matt. Like, unless they would get lucky with a quarterback, like bringing in a Tom Brady, where you can sign a bunch of his buddies instead of building through the draft, you're done. You can't lose out on all those draft picks and just have, I mean, you would have to hope, because like I'm saying they're done if Deshaun Watson doesn't play. So like you almost have to guarantee that the league is going to clear him, which I would assume they would have got that okay from the league, but he didn't want to do it. So we'll see how that goes, but I wonder if that could be a quarterback that's available too. Get the legal thing taken care of. What are they going to do? Houston's going to hold on to him? Try to play him again? Like, I don't think he'll ever play for Houston again.
I don't know. I think there's an outside chance that he could, because if they can't move him, like, I don't know that it's in his looking at what Le'Veon Bell did, where he sat out and chose to take that stand. I don't think he's been the same back since he pulled that.
That was the worst decision of his life. Did you see he changed his Twitter today?
No.
He just made it a bunch of hashtags of what people have been sending him, like washed, bomb, like no good, like retired, stuff like that. I don't know. I'm just making some of them up. So I know washed was like one of them. And so he's like, yeah, this motivates me, blah, blah. Thanks for John Harbaugh for like the opportunity. He's going to continue to work hard. But it's like he single-handedly ruined his career by not signing the Steelers deal. And then I said at the time, you sign with the Jets, you're going to take a beating. Horrible decision for a running back. Horrible. It's not like they even have ever had a scheme since maybe when Sean Green was there with Rex Ryan. And who was their other back? They had two backs back then that they rotated. I just know Sean Green from Iowa when he took down Penn State that one year and they were ranked like third.
Thomas Jones.
Is that who it was? Like, that's the last time they've had a running game consistently. I mean, someone might correct me, but I'm telling you, if you're a big time running back, you don't dream of signing with the Jets. You just don't. I would have been like, hey, where else could I sign that's going to make an impact? Hell, even at his age, like, why not try to sign somewhere else where you can be like a Thunder and Lightning? Like, go to the Saints. He would have been perfect there with Kamara. But like, I don't know if they would have been willing to do that. I mean, he was looking for like a big time deal, but I think at some point you got to look for longevity because now he's gone. Remember, he called out Andy Reid. Now it didn't work out with the Ravens, and the Ravens haven't had anyone. Like, they're going back to what, Murray?
I think
he's been injured because he's on my fantasy team. All my guys are injured, Matt. You get the injured guys, and then that's just how your team rolls. Somehow I'm still in first. And every week, I was actually a Matt Ryan goose egg away from possibly winning this week. If he has an average week, I win. Instead, he had 0 points. And I was like, my other wide receiver was on a bye, and I had some bad moves, so I had to play. I threw Hilton in. I thought maybe he'd be back for the Colts, but he didn't play much either. He's been injured too.
For 3 weeks in a row, I have had started the wrong quarterback.
Well, tell everyone who you started this week because I didn't even know who the hell you were talking about. That's why I didn't text you back. I figured I'd surprise me on the show.
I thought it was going to be Mike White. I was on that Jets bandwagon because he started last week. I started him, and he went right down the field, scored a touchdown, and I thought, all right, maybe there's something to this. Went right down the field, scored, hurt his forearm, and then didn't play the rest of the game. Only had 7 points, and Simeon had a pile. And I thought with Simeon playing against Tampa Bay, that I thought he might have an off game, so I rolled the dice, and once again, 4 interceptions. And like, take the 4 interceptions out, I win, or at least tie.
Cam Newton barely played, and he probably would have got me the win. I don't know how many points he had, but I know he at least had a touchdown on the ground.
Just don't throw the ball to the other team. Win.
Someone picked up Trevor Lawrence because I was looking. I'm like, I always had an eye on him. I'm like, all right, let's see, just in case. Because Baker Mayfield is falling apart on me. Like, there's nothing. As I look at the Steelers and the Browns, there's no reason for me to think the Browns are going to make a run this year. They're dead in the water. Baker Mayfield's like shoulders cracked. Now he has a bum knee. And I'm like, what am I doing with him? Like, just go on the IR, buddy, and heal up. Like, you're going to keep playing? You don't think it's going to get worse? Like, at this point, it's like, do I drop the guy? Because if I drop him, it's not going to matter. But what if he did come back as a Superman? Because that's how my luck would go. Although, who knows? I seem like I've had some luck until this week where I keep winning in spite of my team. McCaffrey's back. Hell, I could have played Hubbard. I think my other guy was like Sonny Michel or whatever from the Rams last night. He had a couple points, but I think if I'd have played Hubbard and Cam Newton, I would have won. If I just went all Panthers for my top 3, McCaffrey, Hubbard, and Cam Newton. It's like, how embarrassing for myself. The rest of my guys, it's like, I don't even know. Because like bye weeks, the way they're stacked up and without Derrick Henry, no movement on him coming back. Some teams are like, oh, he might not come back at all this year. And I'm thinking if you're him and they're leading the league right now, why would you not? I mean, I don't think you should rush back as they're winning, but like, why wouldn't you try to take that time to be, healthy for a playoff run where you can just steamroll teams, right?
Yeah.
If he's out for the playoffs, and I mean, this is just a random guy. It's not like I like the Titans at all, but I would question his dedication to the team. And like, even if it's an ownership decision, it's like, what are you doing? Like, he's a wild card where your team found out to win without him. Didn't Fournette have like a monster game for the Bucks? Like late in the year after everyone was saying how much of a bust he was, wasn't it him?
Yeah.
And so like, why would you not if you have Derrick Henry?
Because I was mad that Pittsburgh didn't sign him.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was him. But see, it's the same deal. Why would you? Yeah, I'm not saying rushing back is like a selfish thing for my fantasy team. Like I don't care about that. But I'm saying like if you're a fan of that team and Derrick Henry, there's no reason for him not to just wait a few weeks and play maybe week 16, 17, 8. Or you could even sit out 18, and then just come in, get some game reps in, like later in the year. And then just come back full force for the playoffs. I don't think you should just come back week 1, maybe play that last week. It depends on, I guess, with the new weeks, how many you're out. But I think it's really risky to just say like, yo, you're completely done for the year just because you had a broken like bone in your foot. It's not like a ligament damage. Like it's structural. So you can just heal from that. That's why Baker's is not structural. His bones are fine. It's ligament damage. You really think that that's going to bounce back when you're not giving it time to heal? No. No way. He's done. Browns are done. Write them down. Burrow, I think teams are figuring him out. You know how normally quarterbacks need a couple of games of film on him. And they start to figure him out. That's why the Patriots, I'm watching, but like with Mac Jones being a rookie, what's going to happen when they start to make some moves on him? Is Belichick, I mean, he must really be listening to the show and be pissed off that I keep calling him an under 500 coach without Tom Brady. They're right above it right now. But he's really trying to prove me wrong. I don't think he's going to do it. But my tip, Cam Newton playing Washington this week, his old coach, Ron Rivera. I don't know if you saw, I think everyone saw the highlight where he scored. He yelled, "I'm back." He took his helmet off and yelled it to the crowd. He's pissed off, dude. So I'm saying if you need a fantasy quarterback, play Cam Newton against the Redskins this week. He's going to light them up. Although, well, I thought they had a decent defense, but then I looked at the fantasy points before the show just to get some stats from me. They're like 29th in points against like quarterbacks. So it's a pretty good matchup for Cam if you think that he's going to run again in the goal line. Remember, he's playing for his contract. His contract said it's like a 1-year deal where he only gets like a couple million locked in, but he has a potential to earn up to 10 million if they win and I think get to the playoffs or something like that. So like they're expecting him to play. They're not just bringing him in. They're not going to pay a player to get to the playoffs if you know he's not the quarterback, right? Like, could you imagine you're the backup quarterback, Tom Brady comes in and your contract says like, hey, if you're on the Super Bowl team, you get like a 50 million bonus or something crazy. You're like, oh, hell yeah. Thank you, Tom. Tom Brady bought this house for me on bonuses. I'm sure all coaches have it. Bruce Arians probably thought that. I know the bonuses wouldn't be that high, but for Cam, it's like $5 million, I think. So he's going to be the guy. He's going to be playing hard for it. That's not to say Ron doesn't have tape on him either, though. So that's my thing. You have any tips for fantasy or any other NFL stuff?
No, because I can't even win myself. So how the hell am I going to give anyone advice?
You can always fluff it up. People don't know what your record is. I'm in first place. I could be 4-9 or whatever. Who knows? But our league is 14 teams, so it's pretty brutal. Matt knows. So being first, you have to be really lucky. Even with all the injuries I've had, it's like, who do I play? And even if I play a guy like Matt Ryan, he just left the game. He was like, this is shit. He couldn't even get 1 point from me. He didn't even think like, hey, maybe my guy needs a point. I should throw 25 more yards real quick before I set this one out. He just like didn't come back in the game. And then his backup was, I think, Josh Rosen. He threw a pick the first pass against the Cowboys. I thought, oh, good. Maybe Matt Ryan will come back in. No, they're like, we're going to let Rosen take a beating here. Probably smart. But I'm hoping that, because he had just won a game. Like, he had 27 points or something ridiculous. He helped me win the game that I wasn't supposed to. So I can't knock him. shit happens. But stay healthy, Matt Ryan. I mean, my other one would have been Russell Wilson and his reconstructed finger. Everyone's like, oh, look how great he looks. He looks like shit. That was the first time he was ever, shut out, I think they said. Awful. It's a quarterback league. That's why I'm hoping that Aaron Rodgers has a lot of controversy right now. Maybe Steelers can get him for cheap. Life without Ben's not going to be good. And before we even get into college, like you guys know, we follow college pretty close. I don't even know if there's a quarterback that I would be excited about in this year's draft. Like the Steelers would be like, oh yeah, that's a great guy. I mean, who do you go with? A bunch of system QBs? Because that's what they are. Ohio State, like CJ Stroud, they're saying he should lead the Heisman race. No way. The Heisman is Kenneth Walker. Because without Kenneth Walker on Michigan State's team, they're complete dog shit. Like Vegas had them like at 3 or 4 wins, Matt. The only difference on that offense is like Kenneth Walker runs for 5 touchdowns against Michigan. If he's not on that team, ignore the blown calls or whatever. They don't even have a chance to come back. Like, Michigan State is not what they are without Kenneth Walker. This game against Ohio State is his Heisman moment, though. Because, like, he did it against Michigan. They cannot get blown out against Ohio State. I think the line's like 20 or something. So, that's my thing. But, like, CJ Stroud, the Steelers sign him. Awesome. Haskins really worked out. Justin Fields, he's looking great lately. No. Like, what Ohio State quarterback has worked out? It's a system QB. That's why I don't understand why they previously, any quarterback under Mike Leach, they're like system QB, system QB, system QB. And then like even Gardner Minshew, I think that they have something against him, like other coaches where they look at him and they're like, oh yeah, you're just a system guy. But like Ohio State guys, they're like, oh yeah, we have all this data that shows they're literally system guys. And they get in the pros and blow. And no one's like, yo, that's a system guy, you know? Same with like Nick Saban's guys. They're like, Nick Saban never had a quarterback win the Heisman. It's like, yeah, because the team is stacked. No one looks at that team and says like, wow, thank God they had that quarterback, you know? Like Clemson, it's pretty clear that Clemson needs that quarterback. Yeah. They haven't been the same. Like that's a Heisman guy. Alabama plugs in a new quarterback every year. Ohio State plugs in a new quarterback every year. They're getting quarterbacks like Fields that like Georgia didn't even want. And Georgia doesn't even have a good quarterback situation. So in college, I don't think like if I'm looking at the Steelers and they're going to say like, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, we're going to draft a QB. It's like, okay, let's just cross our fingers and hope they find a gem. Because as of right now, there wasn't one quarterback that I look around the league and think like, all right, I think that would be the guy. Like Ben Roethlisberger, he had high upside. I remember being excited about him because like the smaller school, he took Iowa to the wire. They were like 10 wins or whatever at Miami, Ohio. And even he fell because of the school he was at. But I don't know. Anything else you have?
Just kind of going back to your earlier comments about the Falcons. Because we talked about it earlier.
I know the Falcons are your favorite team now that John Gruden's out of the league, right?
Well, it cracked me up because when you look at their drafts, like it's like their owner was pretending he was playing Madden. It was like, how can I just outscore everyone?
I blame your man Pitts for one of those interceptions too, because it was intended for him, and I think it hit off his hands.
Well, it was just like all of the plays, all of the everythings are designed for the offense. And it's like, I don't know why we lost by 50. Like, we can't defend anyone. We let all of our defensive people go.
That's how the Saints were. The only reason their defense showed up because they were paying bounties. Like, if you haven't noticed, the Saints aren't known for their defense. And the only year that they won the Super Bowl, their defense was paying bounties to see who could get the most like injuries or whatever they were doing. Like big time plays, you're getting paid on the side. That's how they motivated their poor defense. They're like, look, we're so bad. We're desperate here. We got to throw you guys some extra money on the side. We don't know what we're doing. That's what the Falcons need. They need a bagman. What happened to the Saints after that? Nothing. Drew
They got
Brees'
hurt.
hair grew back after he left that. Must have been really toxic.
But
Go
I
ahead.
did think with like now I'm jumping around a little bit, but you brought up Minshew. I think he would be like, I know they moved him, and now I got to look up where he's at now. But he was one that I thought would be good for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but now it's like the team.
He's with the Eagles now.
Yeah, we don't want an Eagles quarterback on the team. Unless it was Nick Foles after that Super Bowl, but he seems broken now. The Steelers could have just took Nick Foles after that, because the Eagles were so dumb. They had a position right there. They knew that Wentz was a bust. And they could have just traded him while his stock was hot, and they were able to hide it. And like even the coach was like, yo, we don't even want this guy. And they fired the coach, remember?
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, you need Wentz. And then the new coach was like, are you kidding me? Wentz sucks. We got to get rid of him. So now he's like the Colts. I said they were like climbing back. But it's like, all right. Players don't like him. He was like a locker room issue. He was like having all that religious stuff, Wentz. So if your teammates don't like you and the coaches don't like you, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. And the fact that everyone's like crediting him for the Super Bowl he didn't win cracks me up. Like Foles is the guy. Eagles should have stuck with him, traded Wentz, rebuilt that team. And who knows, maybe they have 3 Super Bowls by now. 2, 3. It wouldn't have been back to back. I don't think they need back to back. But now they broke him. Minshew's not going to be good there. Who knows? Eagles quarterback room is awful. That's what I don't want the Steelers to do. Like, you either need to get an alpha. You can't get a guy that might work in Pittsburgh. You need an alpha like Aaron Rodgers that is clearly breaking protocols, not doing anything that he's supposed to be doing. And yet he's coming out talking trash on other coaches, winning. And like, I don't know when he transformed into this guy, because he used to be like the annoying commercial guy. But I kind of like this new rogue Aaron Rodgers. And I think it'd be welcome to see him in Pittsburgh. But after the way he performed in Green Bay looked without him, I think Green Bay has got to be like, yo, we're going to pay you whatever you want, dog. Like, we don't know if I don't know if he's ever going to win another Super Bowl because he wants so much money. But you got to at least have some excitement, right? Even with Lamar Jackson, like the Ravens have nothing on offense. And they always talk about like, yo, Ravens offense, so great. It's Lamar Jackson just running around throwing out bombs. Very similar to like what the Cardinals were doing. And now on Kyler Murray, who we've been saying, undersized, that dude's going to get hurt. And I even jinxed him because I said, hey, maybe he's not going to get hurt because they said he gets hit the least of any quarterback. Wrong. Now he's out. Who knows how long he's out. And then Lamar Jackson, the same type of thing. He's going to get in the playoffs, get a bunch of hits on him. They're going to say like, hey, we dare you to throw up the bomb, because no one in the playoff is going to have a bad defense. If you're a playoff team, you're going to be at least decent after the second round. They can't even get through the first round, I don't think. Right? So
They tend to have a hard time with that.
So yeah, that's my thing. Everything else on your Falcons, what do you think? They're done, right?
They've been done until they can upgrade their defense more. They have to be done.
Well, that will never happen. The Panthers had a defense. I mean, Kuechly retired. Watching them down here and like hearing all their stories about like, I mean, maybe that's Deshaun Watson stuff didn't really come out. Maybe that was just the news down here reporting it. Cause I don't know where I get my sources and stuff, but, hearing them talk about like other issues and like Cam Newton coming back, how they like they almost gave his number up. One of the new players wanted that number 1 and the owner's like, nah, we're going to keep that. That's Cam's number. So then they had it ready for him. And they said that like that opened the doors to him coming back. But like, where else is he going to go? And it's not like he was horrible with the Patriots. They just didn't know how to use him. Like Belichick never had a quarterback like that.
Yeah.
He got just standing back there. That's why he probably got Mac Jones. He's like, this is a guy. This is who I want. A flabby guy. Non-athletic. Just standing back here. Trying not to get hurt.
But I think that's one of the things right now that's hurting Pittsburgh in their thinking of like trying to address this quarterback situation, because a lot of the quarterbacks coming out of NCAA this coming season are going to be more dual threat guys, like the Strong from Nevada.
But even Rudolph, man, I was high on him because he ran like the spread offense. He was known for getting the ball out quick. He doesn't get the ball out quick at all. So like he just can't process the defense. And once you see that, you're done.
But I wonder how much of that though is it he's not getting the ball out quick, or is it that they're calling these longer read throws and putting him in a bad position?
I don't know. Matt Canada kind of runs a lot of that quick type stuff. So like at this point, I'm thinking it's him. Can't read the defense fast enough. And in the NFL, I mean, that can get you some wins. Some quarterbacks that have trouble doing reads, like they stay around for a long time. Even Terrell Pryor was calling out Jared Goff after that game. Did you see that?
No.
He said that him and Colin Kaepernick could step right in and have a better record than the Lions. I'm like, all you have to do is get lucky one time to have a better record. But it's not like Terrell Pryor. Like you think you're gonna be a quarterback, bro? When's the last time you quarterbacked? You like step in and you're like, yeah, I'm better than you, Goff. Like I don't think Goff was the right decision for the Lions. I don't know what their plan is with that deal or whatever they did, but getting rid of Stafford, I just figured that was more of a, hey, we see what happened with Tom Brady. We're not going to ruin your career. Like, at least go try to win a championship. That's how I think that played out. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that was more of like a, hey, you did a lot for us. We'll be here when you come back, like Calvin Johnson. But I don't know. I did have another thing that wasn't NFL related. That I put on here that's big news breaking out of Pittsburgh. The Red Sox owners are interested in purchasing the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so and this is probably for the old timers, because I think a lot of younger guys that listen to the show, they probably think, well, Penguins, awesome. Pittsburgh's like an awesome hockey town, whatever. Before Lemieux bought them, they were looking to relocate. Like, Pittsburgh had the worst attendance in the league, like, when I was in high school. And I remember...
Yeah, they were bad.
I remember them distinctively thinking they were going to lose the Penguins. There was a push to get more teams in the South. Because, like, the Hurricanes had won the Cup, or they were around the Cup that time. I think it was a little bit... I think they won the Cup after. But I think they were successful in the playoffs beforehand. They had a big crowd. The stadium down here is really loud the way that it's built. If it can get full, it gets really loud. Like, I've been there for basketball games and hockey games. It can get nuts because it's like stacked up. So they had success down there. I think that's why they had a lot of other teams that were brought in. Like, I don't even think, because Arizona's gone, right?
I think.
I'm trying to look. No, they're still around. Which team left? Is it a Florida team? I thought one of the other teams left from the South, but maybe I'm wrong. But I did know, and maybe this kept them there in the South, in Arizona. They said that now, if the purchase goes through, they're not going to be able to relocate ownership in the NHL for 7 years. I don't think the Red Sox guys would want to leave Pittsburgh, because I think they realize Pittsburgh's a sports town. But if population continues to drop, like, what would you be surprised? Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if the Pirates left. Like, okay, perfect. They're gone. They end up in Charlotte or somewhere. Like, they just pick up and move, and then Major League Baseball blacks out all their games, and they just become like the Carolina Pirates or something. I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's just like, get them out of there. And then they'll blame the fans, like, oh yeah, well, if we had better attendance, because attendance was so bad for the Pirates this past year, that there were photos I saw where there was like a couple hundred people, if that, at the games. Like in the third inning. So I was like, wasn't going to fill up. But I'm hoping that this is a good sign for the Penguins, because Lemieux had looked to sell them a while ago. I think they even hired someone to try to sell him after one of the cups. The first one, I think. He's still going to be part of the ownership group. I think LeBron's part of their ownership group too. So that'll be big for when they need hype. You bring LeBron in, right, Matt?
There you go.
Have him sit right down there.
Because when I think hockey, I think LeBron.
Which also reminds me, so dumb that when I try to watch the Cardinals, they're constantly showing me J.J. Watt on TV. Like, bro, he's hurt. I don't need to see him. I don't need to see him. Why do you keep having close-ups of him? Like, do you think he's handsome? Like, is he supposed to be the face of the league or something? Like, it wasn't like they were showing me Kyler Murray. I was more interested to see what's Murray up to. How's he doing? He coming back soon? It's like, no, here's J.J. Watt. Isn't he out for the entire year?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, let's see how Watt's doing. He's just sitting there like on the sideline. It's like they can't get enough of the guy. Very annoying. Kind of like that Christian McCaffrey, like, I look good commercial. So dumb. How about you play a few games, man? He went to the injury tent too. McCaffrey. I'm sorry. I'm going back to the NFL stuff. Although the injury thing reminded me, I hope my man Rashawn Gary is okay. Cause I complained about that Packers game, but I did see his arm got like dislocated or something. It was like completely twisted backwards. Like a guy fell on him. And the announcers are like, I don't even know what's wrong with him there, but he's really yelling out in pain. So then they showed the replay. And I was like, oh my God, why are they showing this? And then after they were like, oh yeah, well, we're not going to show the replay. I'm like, you just did. You just showed it because you didn't know what happened. I'm like, you could see the running back. I think it was the running back. He grabbed him with his one arm. He kind of twisted and they both fell back like he had him like in it wasn't like a headlock or whatever, but his one arm was wrapped around him. And when he fell, he like had his arm outstretched and there was like a defensive lineman in the middle. So like his elbow hit that lineman and just like kind of went the wrong way is how it looked. And I was like, oh God, that's disgusting. I don't know if his bone was sticking out, but like it was complete. I think he just dislocated it. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I tried to look it up. I didn't see anything, because they went to the tent and it looked like they probably popped it back into place or whatever. And then, he was kind of walking with it normal after that. But I thought, God, why are you showing that replay? And then they were like, yeah, we can't show that again because that was disgusting. I'm like, yeah, that was brutal to watch. So I'm hoping he's okay because it wasn't like a bad play. And then they did show the floor. He got a call down. He like asked, you could see him ask, how bad is it? And then he just said, oh God. Like they were like, oh, that was bad. Like he's probably gone for a while. And then, cause I guess they've already lost some defenders on the Packers defense. So I don't know, but that's my thing. What do you think of the deal for the Penguins? Do you think they would ever leave?
Well, I think if there was a time to do it, it's now.
To sell or to leave Pittsburgh?
To sell. I don't know that they leave because I think there's enough of a fan base that I think they've reestablished. Like, you recognize you're at the tail end of one of these championship runs that they have to retool. And part of that is making tough decisions. Like, I think if Lemieux stays, you're going to see them kind of just slowly drop off as Letang and Malkin and Gina and Sid get a little older. Whereas you bring in someone who has no emotional connection to the team and can just look at the data and just say, yeah, we can get these picks or we can get this whatever for it. This is what we're going to do. And just clean house, upgrade the roster, get younger, and be off and going.
And that's where I just think as like a younger guy where like I grew up where you watch teams and they just move and then they change. So like I constantly have that fear. I don't think that a lot of people have that so much, I guess, anymore. I guess some of them do. Like if you're a hockey fan in Seattle, you're like, oh, okay, like that's not that good of a move for them. And then they don't have a team and they're trying to get a team back. And then they're like, well, why don't you just cheer for the same team? The one team that I definitely remember were the Nordiques that became the Colorado Avalanche. Because, like, just playing, like, as a kid, I didn't watch much hockey. I didn't play hockey in real life. But watching the Penguins and stuff, they had their couple of cups. We used to go to Johnstown Chiefs games all the time. And so they had, like, the same color, so you're just drawn to that. But playing, like, video games as a kid, I remember that the Nordiques had, like, Patrick Waugh and whoever else they had. And so, like, they were awesome. And I remember them, like, they moved to Colorado. It's like, I guess I'll just cheer for Colorado on the side, you know? They're on the opposite side. They're in the West. So Penguins don't really play them. And so it's like watching that, but then I was thinking, like, man, Quebec, like, they lost their team. I know don't they still have another team? Anyway, I can't remember. I don't know what all the moves were like in the NHL at the time. So they don't, right?
No.
And Quebec's pretty big. So, like, for them to lose them to the Avalanche, and then the Avalanche won a cup, I believe.
Yes.
They won 2 of them back then with, like, that same team. So, like, they just moved and then won the cup. And so, like, that's what triggers me, where it's like, hey, I like those guys. Do I like the guys? Or do I actually like the Avalanche? Like, no, I think I just like the players, you know? So, like, as a fan, where people are like, oh, no, even if, like, the owner's a shithead, like the 49ers owner, people are like, oh, yeah, now if you grew up a 49ers fan, you got to like the 49ers. I'm like, you got to like all those poor decisions they're making. Like how he threw Coach Harbaugh under the bus, and then the replacement that they talked up was bad. They threw him under the bus. They threw Mike Singletary under the bus as coach. It's like at some point, the owner's just an asshole. So, like, why are you supporting him? At the first chance he would get, they would move the team. And guess what? They did. They're, like, on the outskirts of San Francisco now. So it's like, why would you support that? Where, like, some franchises, like the Steelers, it's like in the family, they're doing their own thing. It's part of the city. They're ingrained. I think if they left, it would be devastating. The Pirates leave at this point. The fans are so fractured from the ownership and how much they hate them that I think fans are just starting to be like, yeah, you know what? I can't support the Pirates anymore. And I think that's at the point where you're like now worried. I don't think Major League Baseball has that rule where you can't move the team. I mean, I was worried that the Braves, they had new ownership and they kind of went through it. Basically, you're on point with what they did. New ownership, made some tough decisions. I think the guy they had was like Freddie Freeman around still, right? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
So, like, they cleaned house, and that's where it's like, all right, I'm already annoyed at baseball at this point. I'm not going to follow the Braves as close. I really hope they win because that was my team growing up. And then it's like, all right, now they're back and they're kind of rebuilt. And that's why it's funny that, like, the agents of players are like, this isn't fair. Asterisk beside this win. It's like, no, the league did this. The league made it that way. You have to win. Like the Penguins. If they don't tank and get Malkin and Crosby, they don't win those cups. Like, they were horrendous back in those times. Like, it was bad hockey. They don't talk about moving a team unless the team is bad. And so, like, now, like, you're right. I think there's so much value there now that I don't think they're in danger of moving. But with, like, today, like, look at the Raiders. Consistent fan bases everywhere. Like, if you grew up a local, you just have to like the Raiders. Not where they're from. That's just who you like. That's why, like, the Indians from Cleveland, like, they changed their name. How many people were just like, yeah, I kind of just like the Indians, you know? I don't know these new guys. I think that's why Washington's afraid to pick a mascot, too. That's my last random talk, though. You have anything else on that?
No.
College, I already let off a little bit with Michigan beating Penn State. The big one was kind of like, in the past, I know you were razzing me because you were upset about Florida State being awful this year, saying that, like, Michigan's known chokers, but they're kind of the same. Look at Oklahoma losing. Does anyone think that Oklahoma was going to win or go, like, undefeated, and even if they make the playoffs, going to win? No. Georgia's known chokers too. They're basically the SEC version of Michigan. And, like, they only won the SEC championship because Alabama lost and they got to play Auburn. They should have been, like, celebrating in the streets. Like, Michigan would be so pumped if somehow like Ohio State had a year where like they just bombed and it didn't matter. Like it could have been this year, maybe, like if Michigan didn't choke at Michigan State. And so like they were able to just lose to Michigan or Ohio State and just make the Big Ten championship. Like that's kind of like the karma that they need. But I feel like they're at the Georgia point where if that happened, they're done. They're going to get killed in the playoffs and it's not going to matter. I mean, look, that's what happened when Michigan State had that happen to them. They backed in last time and they got killed by Alabama. As I look through the college football rankings, Matt, I don't think it's solid. I don't think that Georgia's going to beat Alabama. Because Alabama is starting to do some things where they're clicking. And guess what? They're going to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to beat them. What do you think?
I don't know. Georgia's starting to pull away a little bit. I think.
No. They're not pulling away. Their schedule is Charmin soft right now. They got lucky because remember, the SEC East is kind of like the Big Ten West right now. Florida is garbage. People were high on Kentucky. Kentucky's not that good. I saw people were like, oh, the Kentucky would run through the Big Ten. Really? Like, are you serious? Kentucky would do that? Because I don't think that's going to happen. The team that beat University of Tennessee Chattanooga by 5, they would rip through the Big Ten. They barely have won games that they're supposed to win. Like, that's the team, Kentucky, that's going to rip through the Big Ten. Like, no way. Like, that's the second best team in the East, Matt. They're the equivalent of the Big Ten West, where Georgia is Wisconsin. Like, they have the undefeated, and it's remember when Wisconsin, then they beat LSU that one year? They went ahead, everyone was like pumped, like, this is the team. This is the team. Wisconsin's going to finally beat Ohio State. And they got crushed in the Big Ten championship. And everyone was like, oh, well, I guess that's what's going to happen. I have a feeling that's what's going to happen with Georgia. Their schedule is bad. They have these ranked wins against teams that like weren't that good. Clemson, not good. Auburn, okay. Penn State beat them. Like, proves my point. Kentucky, I already talked about them. And Arkansas, which we're not sold on. Arkansas plays Alabama this week. I think if Alabama kills Arkansas, that's bad news for Georgia. Georgia now ends the season with Charleston Southern, I think, and then Georgia Tech. Like, there's no way they're not undefeated. But I think if you go back and look at that schedule, I don't even know, like, I guess Auburn lost again. Are any of these teams going to end up ranked that they beat? Auburn's out already. Arkansas's 21, so if they lose to Bama, they're out. Kentucky's out. Oh, the rest of the SEC East is out. Clemson, they have to be close, right? Does Clemson get back in yet? No.
I think they're
not.
Probably not. They'll
So
hold them.
they would have no ranked wins in the playoff committee thing. So, like, if you're looking at Georgia, how can you not compare them to, like, Wisconsin teams of yore? Like, that's just what I'm looking at. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to end up backing into the playoffs when in other conferences, that wouldn't happen. And it's going to be a sham. And so I'm with Cincinnati here, where I was kind of annoyed. I don't know if you saw this, where their AD from, like, the AAC, I can't keep the conferences straight. I think that's where they're at right now, where the latest proposal that came out that said they're going to have 6 automatic bids. It's going to be the Power 5 conferences and 1 group of 5. And he's like, we're not going to sign off on that. We're going to band together the group of 5 and do that. And I thought, okay, that's a smart move. But they need to be more specific with what they want. They didn't say what their alternative was. It wasn't that they were going to push, hey, or just take the 6 highest ranked champions and have them be in, which I think that they should push for. Because, like, if, let's say you're looking at this, and I know, like, what they're doing, but right now Pitt's like 18th or whatever. Say Pitt loses another game and they're unranked and they're in the championship game against Wake and they beat them. and they're ACC champs. Like, did they deserve an automatic bid over Cincinnati? No. Hell no. Like, they lost to Western Michigan. Like, that's not even I think it was Western. Like, that's the team that, like, Michigan killed. And, like, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, like, that's it. They're in. So I'm hoping that they push for that and they just go with the 6th highest ranked champions, because I'm not saying the ACC shouldn't be in. Like, if Wake Forest are taking care of business and they're undefeated and they're in the top 10, and even if they would drop the ACC championship game, like as a fluke to Pitt, guess what? They would still be the ACC rep in the playoffs. Like, who cares what the arbitrary championship game is? And I don't know. I think, did we talk about this last week? So down here, there's a lot of heat where the ACC really wants to get rid of these divisions. And so I don't know if you've heard this from the Florida State side, but I wanted to get your take on it, because they look at Miami, fired their AD, they're done. They're going to fire their coach. It's pretty much set in stone. I saw a thing where they were like showing him like kind of like a retro, where it's like, hey, here's a highlight of like his career at Miami. And even he was a young boy and he dreamed of coaching Miami, and it just didn't work out. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're getting rid of him. Virginia Tech fires Fuente. And it's like, I looked back and I'm like, why fire him? I even had the stats up because I'm like, I'm going to look at these on the show. And I know he's kind of been going downhill, like 10-4, 9-4, 6-7. Then they went 8-5. I think you throw out last year. So give him a chance to go 8-5 again. And then next year, build on that. Because like last year doesn't really count. Players weren't transferring. You weren't allowed to practice. So like it was a weird situation all around. But then like the rest of it, like Mac Brown, he looked like he was like grandpa, like in the nursing home in his last press conference after that Pitt loss. Is that who Pitt beat last time? It was a Thursday night game, wasn't it? I got my games matched up last time we talked. I was all confused. So I'm trying to make sure I'm on the ball this time. But yeah, after that game, we went to overtime. He looked like he was dead. Like, oh yeah, I'm out of it. So like they're looking at that entire side. Duke's talking about firing their coach finally. Georgia Tech's 3-7. Like, oh, if Georgia would lose to them, that'd be hilarious because Georgia Tech is awful. So like ACC sees that and they're like, okay, well now that's going to be our championship game. Wake Forest at Pittsburgh. I looked up, remember whenever Florida State played Georgia Tech? ACC champ tickets were $5. No, wait, correction. It was $4. Because I think the fees were $4.95. The fees on the ticket were more expensive than the actual ticket.
I went to one of those.
Yeah. I've been telling you guys, I've been saying like, hey, if something happens, I had it all mapped out. If Florida State would have won out, they would have played Pitt again. You know, tickets would have been like $3. Pitt can't even fill up Heinz Field. They're not traveling to Charlotte in December. Like, who are we kidding?
Hey, they might.
Same with Florida State. Holiday. Florida State's known to not travel to Charlotte. So, like, just show up. Cheap tickets. If you get them at the box office, man, you don't have to pay those fees. You'll get it for the flat $4. They'll tarp the top. Remember when they tarp the top for that? So now it's like Wake Forest, which I think is pretty much locked in at this point. I know they play Clemson, and there is a slim chance that Clemson could be the ACC rep. Like, wouldn't it be hilarious if Clemson won out and Wake lost to, they would have to lose to Boston College. And I believe, I don't know how their tiebreaker works, but right now NC State would have to lose another one to make it clear Clemson wins. Because they're tied and they have the tiebreaker over Clemson. Clemson would have the tiebreaker over Wake, and Wake would have the tiebreaker over NC State. So like it would be a 3-way tie. I don't know who would go in that scenario. But NC State plays Syracuse and UNC, and both of them have kind of been in the dumpster lately. So I don't think a 3-way tie is out of the realm. It just depends on, does Clemson beat Wake Forest up so bad that they lose to Boston College? It is at Boston College, so you never know. But Boston College isn't that good. I guess they're 6-4. So, but in the league they're 2-4. So not good in the ACC. But how do you think that would even work, though? Like, you're going to have completely unbalanced schedules like last year. You're just going to pick the top 2 teams that you think. You're getting a 3-way tie possibly this year. Possibly, I think if Pitt were to lose 2 more games, and I don't know if it's possible, but I think that there could be a 3 or 4-way tie in the Coastal as well, which would just be insane because that would be hilarious. Yeah, so I think it would be a 3-way tie because, or no, it depends on what Miami does. Let me look at their schedule real quick. I think they play Pitt again. So Miami would have to, I think it was possible. Miami would have to win out. Virginia Tech would have to win out. And Virginia would have to beat Pitt. And then Pitt would just have to lose their last game to Syracuse. And you would have a 4-way tie in the Coastal. So, like, could you imagine if you're Cincinnati and you see a 3-way tie in the Atlantic and a 4-way tie in the Coastal, and they're telling you that, like, yo, ACC champ has to get in. It's like, why'd you sign up for that? How would you do that to yourself? And I know it's just a down year for the ACC. That could be any conference. Because, like, even if Georgia gets in, there's no guarantee that, like, if Georgia wins a close one versus Bama and they both get in, I don't think 2-loss Bama gets in. I think they have to fall at that point. But if Alabama kills them, does Georgia just fall to 4? Do they get a courtesy flush and they go to 5?
I think if Cincinnati wins out, I almost think they have to be in.
They're not going to be in. It's set up so much. They released the top 7. So it's Ohio State 4, Cincinnati 5, Michigan, and then Michigan State. There's still a scenario, very outlandish, where the Big Ten could still get 2 teams in with the SEC. If Alabama beats Georgia, they both have 1 loss, assuming they win out. If Michigan and Michigan State both win out, which I think is absurd because Ohio State would have to lose back-to-back weeks, which I don't even know if that's happened recently at all. But in that scenario, Michigan State would win the Big Ten championship. They would kind of leapfrog Michigan, but Michigan's sitting there with 1 loss. They would have a better resume than Notre Dame. They're already ahead of them. And they would be the highest non-champ 1-loss team. So you would be down between, and I would assume Oregon would have to lose the game for this to happen. But if Oregon loses, you would have Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Michigan State, and Cincinnati as your top 5. I don't know if you look at that and you just say, like, yo, Cincinnati, you're in. I don't think you can do that. And which one of those 4 teams do you pull out? Do you just go champs? And then do you look at it and say, like, all right, well, here's Georgia with their 0 ranked wins. Here's Michigan. They would have, like, what, 2 at that point? 3? I don't know how many because they don't go by the AP ranking and the bullshit ranking where Georgia right now has a credit for a top 5 win because they beat that Clemson team at the beginning of the year. The college football playoff looks at their ranking. So let me see. Michigan would beat Wisconsin. In that scenario, they would beat Ohio State, and they would also have beaten. I thought there was one other one. So they would have at least 2 or 3. And I don't know if Georgia would even have any. Arkansas, but I'm saying if Arkansas falls out, that would be it. I don't see how they would keep Georgia in. And I hear the media talking about how Georgia's a lock. I just don't see it. Hell, even Cincinnati, if you're comparing resumes, undefeated Cincinnati would have a top 10 win over Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not going to lose the rest of the year. So that's why they could even sneak in. Michigan loses to Ohio State and Michigan State loses to Ohio State. So Ohio State gets in. Oregon loses. You could see Notre Dame jump the Cincinnati team they lost to.
No, there's absolutely not.
Now you say that now. They don't care.
I will. Well, this is the other part to it that's going to piss everyone off. If you're Cincinnati, win out and then just buy your rings, raise the banner.
They would give them the hardest bowl matchup of all time. Like if Alabama loses to Georgia, you know Cincinnati's playing Alabama.
And you know, and if you beat them, so be it.
If you beat them now, I would 100% raise the banner and then be like, look, we beat them. Because, like, all right, so as a Michigan fan, I don't think Michigan State's going to beat Ohio State. So I think that the Michigan and versus Ohio State game is going to be the Big Ten East championship game. If Michigan were to win out and make the playoffs, I would prefer to see Georgia. I would prefer to see Cincinnati, and I would prefer to see Notre Dame, if I'm being honest. I think that would be a very winnable playoff. Oregon, I'm not sold on. They did beat Ohio State and they have some speed. Michigan's has a new defensive coordinator, but all three of those other schools, Georgia, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame, all play like more of the pro style offense that Michigan matches up with so well that, like, if there's some luck where that was the playoff, even if Michigan had to play, I guess in that scenario, Michigan and Cincinnati would be the 2 and 3. Notre Dame would play Georgia. Like, a Notre Dame Michigan national championship game would be ideal if you're a Michigan fan in terms of matchup. I don't know how you could ask for a better thing. But that's not even outside of the realm of possibilities, man. Because, like, it could happen. It just depends if Oregon, which their big game is this weekend, do you think they win? They play Utah. I think it's this weekend.
I think they should.
I don't know. Utah's been pretty good. I don't know if you've watched them. They've been inconsistent. That's the knock on them. And so, like, what game did I watch recently where they just destroyed the team? Was it Stanford? They just ran all over them. 52-7. And that's the team, Stanford, that ran all over Oregon. So, like, is Oregon going to be able to stop Utah? I don't know. And with Utah, they're more of a pound game where they're just going to wear you down. Now, they did lose to Brady Hoke, and they lost to BYU. Their other losses to Oregon State. So, like, they lost 2 games early, and they've been coming on strong. Most likely, Oregon's going to have to beat them twice. Because I think that they're going to be the Pac-12 South champ. They just have to beat Colorado, and then they already have the tiebreaker over Arizona State. So as long as they would beat Colorado, they would have to play them again. And which is always tough to do, especially on, like, 2 weeks. Like, they play them now, would play Oregon State, or no, Oregon would play Oregon State and then play Utah again. Utah would play Colorado, which is definitely the worst team too. So even Oregon, you're going to have a trap game in between, which is a rivalry game. And Oregon State's not even half bad. So, like, if you're Cincinnati, I think you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, they're in. They're probably begging for ACC chaos. The Big 12, they're begging for chaos there because Oklahoma hasn't looked good all year. And like I had said, don't think that the committee is not looking at Oklahoma and thinking they're going to the SEC. We don't need a Big 10 or Big 12 rep if it's going to be Oklahoma. They'll have their chance in like 2 years to get there. But that's my main thing. Like, as I'm looking at this, if you're Cincinnati, I think the one team that does hurt is Oklahoma State. Because I think if they're a one-loss team that's sitting there, they're going to be left out. I 100% believe Cincinnati would get in over them. But what do you think? Is there any other scenarios you could think of that would be crazy?
I mean, I just think all of them are going to be crazy in general. It's just going to be let them play out. And I think that's what the committee's doing. Like, that's why you're seeing Michigan State, and Ohio State so that they're guaranteeing at least one, if not two, because they're playing well enough that they can justify putting them in. And
the big news for, like, people that are saying, like, well, the non-conference doesn't matter. Like, Cincinnati's win over Notre Dame doesn't really matter. They shouldn't even schedule them next time because it's not helping them. But I think that is what has them ahead of them right now. But, like, for Notre Dame, it was like, why schedule that game? That's a lose-lose for them. The rest of their schedule is so down, and everyone knows that, like, the last couple times Notre Dame has backed into the playoffs because their schedule has been so weak. It's weak again this year. The only team that's really keeping them out is that Cincinnati team. So, like, if you're a Notre Dame hater, you just want Cincinnati to win out to kind of give that buffer to be like, now look, really? Do you want this team in? the AAC has that uncategorized championship. Like there's no divisions there. And so right now, the other top team in the league is 9-1 Houston. Cincinnati doesn't play them. They would end up playing them in the championship. So they have to play SMU, that's 8-2. They have to play East Carolina, that's 6-4. And that's at East Carolina. And they have a pretty big fan base. So don't overlook that game. I would say that if Cincinnati can get through those two games, they're right there. I don't understand why SMU is not even considered to be ranked by the committee, other than to give them an excuse to keep Cincinnati out. Houston is ranked though now, but you'd have to believe that if Cincinnati beats them, they're going to drop right out. Because like you have Utah ranked just to give Oregon another quality win. They have Mississippi State ranked for some reason, probably for Bama. But like the only thing that would really, really annoy me is if Georgia loses to Bama and Georgia's number 4 and we immediately have to see a rematch, because I don't think Georgia would even beat them again. I think Alabama would beat them both times. And you're just keeping Cincinnati out at that point for no reason. Because like in that scenario, I think the most plausible scenario right now is Alabama beats Georgia, Oregon wins out, Ohio State wins out. So you're looking at Bama, Oregon, Ohio State, top 3. And then you're looking at the 4 spot where is it Georgia or is it Cincinnati? And I guarantee they put Georgia in, even though they have no wins at that point. Which is a shame. And I would hate to see that rematch. I don't think they put Georgia at 3, because that's even more absurd. Like, would you put Georgia above like a Big Ten or Pac-12 champion? Like, I don't see how they could plausibly do that and say like, yep, that's it. That makes sense, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that's the only scenario where, like, as I look at this, and I know these aren't set in stones, hell, there could be an upset this week. Like Alabama could lose to Arkansas, and then it would throw a complete wrench into it. Because then you're going to go back to that old Penn State, Ohio State debate. If Alabama is a 2-loss SEC champ, do they get left out in favor of 1-loss Georgia team that they beat? Or are they going to both get in? Like that shouldn't happen, you know? So I think that's even worse for the committee if Alabama loses. I think that's why they have them at 2. Because if they win out, but then you're looking at it like Georgia's only losses to that top team then. I don't know. I just think that's a fluff ranking. Alabama has the worst loss, by the way. Or no, I guess Oregon with Stanford would,
Which is probably why they have them on the fringe of being out.
I mean, Texas A&M 16. So Michigan's loss is to number 7. Michigan State's loss is unranked. So that's why they're below Michigan. Even though people are like really upset by that for some reason, but you barely won at home. And then you lost by double digits to Purdue. Like I wouldn't even be surprised if you're behind Notre Dame at this point.
I feel confident saying that Texas is not going to be in the playoffs.
Hey, who told you that Sarkisian was a bad hire? Me. I'm just saying Sarkisian sucks. Like, I've seen nothing in that guy's career at Washington, USC. I know he blamed alcoholism there. Even at Alabama, where I was like, that's a hell of a hire. Like, if Michigan hired him, I'd be like, oh, damn. I'm not even joking here, Matt. I would have been more excited if Michigan had hired Dan Mullen.
Wow.
What has Sarkisian done other than be gifted these programs and then see, okay, Chris Peterson takes up after him, immediately 100 times better, and they make the playoffs at Washington. USC, garbage. Like, he basically ruined them. He was so bad that they're afraid to fire Clay Helton until this year. Like, that's a big sign for you. I don't know how he falls into these positions. Like, there's no one at Texas that, like, as I watch this and I see all the Texas people like come out and say, like, hey, this is a great hire. Everyone's going to be in on this. Like, college football better look out. There was nothing that I saw with Sark that has changed my mind. Losing to Kansas, it's like awful. Awful.
At home yet to boot.
Yeah, the first road win for Kansas in like 56 tries or something like that. That's how Michigan fans feel against playing Ohio State, Matt. It's only been like 6 or 7 years or something they said. That's all. I think it was ESPN put out this stat. It was like, Michigan hasn't beaten Ohio State in 8 tries, and Harbaugh has 6 of those losses. I'm like, I don't even think Harbaugh played him 6 times. And I did the math, and I think they were definitely wrong, because I think Brady Hoke has 3 of those losses. So I'm like, who does this? Do they not fact check? They just try to like bring Harbaugh down. That's how I feel about some of those other stats too. It's like someone was like, hell yeah, where are these deep stats from Kansas that really no one cares about that are going to make Texas fans go crazy? And like, Matt, they're moving to the SEC and they think that it's a good move. They think they're not going to be Arkansas. Remember, Arkansas was awesome until they joined the SEC too. And then they got an awesome coach, and then he wrecked his motorcycle. Ruined both. He tried to come back to Louisville after that. Didn't work out. But that's like, so that's my main topics. The college, I had one more topic on the board. College coaching buyouts. When Virginia Tech, I mentioned earlier, when they fired Fuente, I think it's like $10 million they owe him. Why? Like if Florida fires Dan Mullen, they're going to be paying him. When? Well, I mean, they were down. I'm surprised they beat Samford, to be honest. I was already texting like that was a loss on Saturday. But I didn't really care either way. Miami, when they fire Diaz, like that's going to be another one. Patterson, like TCU fired Patterson. Did you see they're going after your boy Deion Sanders?
What?
You didn't see that? Oh my gosh. The players have put together like something with the boosters where they're trying to get people to back Deion Sanders to TCU. They think that like they're a small school and like they can bring him in and give him the cred he needs there.
I don't know.
Do you know what I actually want to see? I want to see him go to Miami.
I think Michael Irvin would be a better fit.
He doesn't coach though.
Well, neither does Manny Diaz.
Did you write that before the show? Writing material.
That literally just came to me. No, but I had to laugh because the former players are doing like a podcast and video on the state of the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah.
So
the one thing that came out about that, it was like 3.5 hours. I said, who the hell plans a 3.5 hour meeting?
Well, if it's gonna be 3.5 hours, you better have a time frame for it. You can't be like, well, I got a date tonight. I'm out of here.
They had the first half hour where they were like, all right, we got to fire Diaz, and then after that, they had a 3-hour discussion on if they could hire Deion Sanders. Because, like, let's be honest, Florida State, some fans or some players of Florida State wanted him. I don't think Florida State would ever hire Deion Sanders for whatever reason. So it would make sense where, like, Miami might say, you know what? We'll get Deion Sanders in here. And I think that enough Miami players might be behind it to really give, if their players are that invested, they're having a 3.5 hour meeting. They're invested to get like a guy like Deion Sanders that could change the culture there and just make it all about winning and being flashy, which you need to do in the NIL time, which Miami could also do because they already have boosters paying their players. Why not pony up for Deion Sanders? And then that would also keep Florida State down because if you're in state and Florida State coach comes in and he's like, yeah, this is us. We're trying to really build. We haven't really made a bowl game yet. And then Deion Sanders is like, look, I went there. You don't want to go there. Come play for me. Miami's where it's at. And then boom, the rivalry is immediately back up to 100. That's why like everyone talks about like Ohio State's not going to hire a Luke Fickell. I mean, you don't have to be blind to see that. They had a chance to hire him after the Urban Meyer thing again. I think him losing to Michigan and having that bad year has tainted him so much, they're never going to hire him. People talk about like, well, what's Michigan going to do if like Harbaugh would leave or if you did fire Harbaugh after last year when they went 2-4? I think everyone else is going to be a crapshoot. You might as well go with Luke Fickell. He would at least hate Ohio State enough that he would want to beat them. And I think if you can beat your rival, and I know Florida State and Miami is a different level right now, but Ohio State's like so big up there. That's why, like, if you get a guy that's like, all right, I feel scorned enough where I just want to beat them to show them, like, yo, you should have hired me instead of Ryan Day. That's what's going to get it done. I mean, if he would win a national championship there, it would be like lights out. He would always have that over them. Like, imagine Deion Sanders bringing Miami a national championship after, like, they were petitioning for him to be the coach after Willie Taggart.
Well, you look at what he's done at Jackson State. Jackson State. They're top of their conference right now. They're undefeated at this point of the year. So he's like completely flipped their program.
Matt, that's what I'm saying. That would be a smart hire by Miami. The only other coach I want Miami to get is James Franklin. Not because I want him out at Penn State. I mean, Michigan seems to be able to handle them whenever they have a competent team, including some blowouts. I would say Franklin there would make Miami more fun because it seemed like a couple years ago, and maybe it's more of a recruiting thing, I don't know, when he had Saquon Barkley, like Penn State was a fun program. The fun has gone. They're dead. Did you watch the game? Like, there was nothing. I was upset that Michigan was blowing it because it was like, why are they blowing it? They should be burying Penn State because Penn State has no excitement. They just killed their quarterback. Like, everyone was complaining about how on the last play of the game, Clifford just threw the ball away after like 1 second, like he didn't even try. But I'm like, dude, did you see him like limping down the field? He was probably like, it's 4th down. Our guy's not open. I'm just throwing it up. And it just kind of drifted away from him because he's hurt. He's probably like, that's it. All right. That was enough of a beating for me. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he just said, like, you know what? I'm done. He's like left in the middle of the game. I wouldn't have been surprised because he was getting killed in that game. But Franklin, for whatever reason, can't get his line to Penn State anymore. Go to Miami, get a new start. They have boosters, get involved with the former players, have them help you recruit, use like the boosters that are already there paying NIL stuff. You're already in an easier division. Like, you even going all the way up to like Pittsburgh, like in that division, you're already from, like, you've been in Pennsylvania for such a long time. They're coming from there. You can have that pipeline for anyone around there that hates Pitt. Get them right down to Miami, bring back like some of that Big East rivalry that's kind of missing in the ACC right now. And all you have to do is get to 10 wins. Right now, he's been consistently doing that at Penn State, and it's not enough because of, guess who? Ohio State. At Miami, Clemson's there. They're in the other division. So even if you're running into them, you're losing in the ACC championship game. You're not losing and finishing, what, 3rd in the Big Ten? 4th? I guess it'd be 4th this year, right? So they're locked in at 4th at best, which I think is what it is. So, like, if you look at him and what he's been having to do, it has to be hard. You look at what Mel Tucker is at with Michigan State. Franklin's probably looking at that and they're thinking like, oh shit. Like, that's what I need. Another program that I have to compete against every week. I go to Miami and like, they were ranked so high this year. Remember?
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason. They lost to Michigan State anyway. But it's like, so Franklin's finished 6th, 4th, tied for 1st, which was the Big Ten championship year, tied for 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, and 3rd. So like, he had 1 first place finish, 1 second place finish, and both of them were ties. So it's like, okay, I'm trying to see who he tied with. I know he tied with Ohio State the one year. They beat him on that blocked kick, wasn't it? And then they tied with Michigan State the next year for 2nd. And then after that, it's been, oh no, he had 2nd twice. The other one was a tie, one wasn't. That was 2019. So you're looking at that. Look at what Miami's doing and how they could easily be tied for 1st right now. And they already lost how many games, Matt? They might finish tied for 1st. And they're 5-5. Franklin would be like, oh my God. Why would you take the pressure at LSU or USC if you've already shown you can win at Vanderbilt? You have a program at Penn State that if you took Penn State's program and that just, they swap places with Miami, like he's still in Miami in the ACC, and you're winning 10 games a year, that's only going to elevate the recruiting. They're going to recruit better than Clemson in like a couple years. It wouldn't take long to get Miami back up there. They'd be the premier program again. And then if Florida State ever gets back, then you would have that big rivalry in the other division. And if not, then just use Clemson. Like, what's the big deal? People already hate Clemson because of how successful they've been. So that's what I want to see. I know we're kind of going long, but that's what I want to see James Franklin go there. The LSU wanted Jimbo Fisher. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that before we wrap up.
No, I was happy that Florida State beat Miami. And that was all that I didn't have to break the TV at my parents' house.
You weren't worried about, oh my gosh, are we going to have to fire our coach to get into a bidding war with Miami and Florida for a new coach?
No, I think just because of last year being his first year in the pandemic season, everyone gets a pass there.
But people aren't giving him a pass. They didn't give Fuente a pass. That's why I said he should have gotten a pass last year. I agree with you.
Yeah, but Fuente's been there for a while and just hasn't moved the needle. Like, the expectations were so much higher for him coming in.
That's true. But they both came from Memphis, didn't they?
I don't know now.
I think didn't Fuente build the program? Norvell just riding his wave. I could be wrong. There might be someone in between them. I guess I should look that up. Maybe you should know your coach's history.
I know he was a Pitt.
Who was? Norvell?
Uh-huh.
Was that when he had the cornrows?
That wasn't when he had the cornrows. That was during the era that is not to be spoken of at Pitt.
Yeah, so Fuente was there from 2012 to 2015. He took the Virginia Tech job. It looked like Daryl Dickey was the interim. And then Norvell was there for the next couple of years. So in terms of, what the hell is that? I don't know what that's not even a winning percentage. So I don't know what that is. I was hoping that they had the winning percentage in here, but I don't think that is. Maybe this one is. Was he? Wait, what is this? Overtime wins? OL. This is like the weirdest Wikipedia page I've ever seen. I don't know what these percentages are. But Norvell looks like he might have been more successful, but I don't know if that's the number, if that's right or not. Because it doesn't make sense. It looks like it's conference win percentage or something. So that might not be their full win percentage. But they look about the same. I think Fuente had 50 wins. Norvell had 53. Or no, wait, that's games coached. Shit. So, no. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at wrong. So Norvell was more successful there. He had a 72% winning percentage compared to only 52 for Fuente. So maybe he took that, built it up. I don't know. Maybe they needed him to take it to the next level. But I don't know. Jimbo Fisher shot it down. Lincoln Riley now has been linked to LSU. Why? Why would you leave Oklahoma? They're going to join the SEC. You're going to get a pass. Like, why would you go to LSU where they're going to fire you after you win a national championship?
Yep.
LSU's not even that much better of a program. Everyone's talking about like how they're better than like USC and stuff. They're not. They're not. They've been better recently, but you're in a harder division. I know Oklahoma's most likely going to be in that division, but at least wait and see at this point. Oklahoma's 100 times better than them historically as a program and currently as a program. There's zero reason for you to leave Oklahoma. Oklahoma's one of the ones where I always talk about how there's like 5 big ones. The only reason Oklahoma's not included in that is money. They're in a smaller state. They don't have as big of a fan base, but winning percentage, championships, they're up there with the other ones. Like if I was taking a vote for a number 6, it would most likely be Oklahoma. I think they would beat out USC for me. USC would be like, what would make that USC better? Money? Historically, Oklahoma's been better than USC. And hell, you could even flip Oklahoma and kick Texas out of that top 5. Texas is only there because of money. Then you could have, if you're looking at just historical football powers, you would have, I'm going to try to look up the Winsipedia thing to see, because they like have their own, just in terms of like winning percentage or whatever. Okay, that's not the right thing. But as I do that, you have anything for the final bell?
Negative. Just want to see Florida State continue this winning trend. Knock off Boston College, beat Florida, force Mullen to get fired.
So, circling back around, you have Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, Michigan as your top 4. Then winning percentage, Oklahoma would be next. Texas is right behind them. I think people put Texas in the top 5 because of their power, just because of money, and they own that big state. USC would be 6th or 7th. They'd be 7th. I'm skipping Boise because Boise's up there like right at the same as Michigan, but they also haven't played as many years. So in wins, they're not in there. But if you go to wins, I think it's the same. Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, then Texas and Oklahoma. Penn State's actually there too. So they and them in Nebraska, they're ahead of USC in wins. But that's my last thing. I know we went long, but it's football season, and we're getting close to the end of college. So then we'll have a lot less to talk about, and it will wind down as another depressing winter kicks in because it's been cold here. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.